How long can you go without eating? Generally, it's 8 days. Some of us are a little bit more, let's just say we have reserves. And we can go longer. But, if you have access to good water, someone can go without eating for as long as 2 months. How long can you go without water? 3 days. 3 days is the average. Some people can make it as long as 8, but most adults can't make it more than 3. Water is an essential part of who we are. In fact, it makes up 60% of an adult body. And 71% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. It's no mistake that in the Scriptures we hear about living water. Not just flowing water, but water that gives life. That was the scare that the Israelites had in the desert of Sinai. They arrived at this oasis, and it was dry. And they feared that they would die there. It's a natural fear. Most of us would have that very same fear. And they riot against God and against Moses. And God brings forth water from the rock. He does what seems to be the impossible to make sure that they would have life. That is the background of the gospel we hear today, where today we hear about that nameless woman of Samaria who comes to the well at Shechem at noon. And it's interesting because even today in many third world countries, women are the ones that go for the water, and they usually do it in the cool of the morning when it's much easier. She comes at noon, which makes one wonder how she got along with the other women, because she didn't want to be there with him. She comes at a time when she knows that there will be no one there, only to encounter this Jew who asks for water. And it's the beginning of a conversation that awakens in her something that, she knew, but she didn't really realize. This woman was someone who had a rather checkered life. Having had 5 husbands, she was now living in an adulterous relationship with a 6th. And, one would be led to think, at least that comes to my mind, that, today is a day that maybe Mike isn't here, he's out there with Peter, but, today would have been a good day as one of our hymns to have that old country western song, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places, Because that certainly was her story. She was looking for love. She was thirsting for love. All of us thirst for love. Yesterday evening, somebody came up to me after Mass, and I thought it was interesting because he talked about the fact that, there are 3s. You can go 3 weeks without eating, you can go 3 days without eating, but you can only go 3 seconds without love. I don't know how true that is, but I like it. I like it. That is one of the most essential things that human beings need in their life, to experience love. All of us thirst for that. We want to be accepted by others as we are. We want to be loved by others. We want to learn to love them in turn. And we all want to have purpose and meaning in our life. That really is the 4 basic thirsts or heart wishes of human beings: to be accepted, to love, to be loved, and to have purpose. That's what every human being seeks, and we go about it in all kinds of strange ways. But most of all, that is part of who we are as human beings. That's the way God made us. This week, as I was pondering the gospel, I was reminded of a story from my own life. Again, I've told you before that for 10 years, my 2 nieces lived with me. The oldest one was 19 when she came, and the younger one was 12. She was 12. What an ideal time, In any case, my sister had MS. She wasn't much able to parent. And so that kind of fell to me. And for the first couple of months, we kept butting heads more than a few times, And one of the things was, clean up the kitchen. None of you ever had that problem, I know. But, I would come home and there would be dishes in the sink and I said, Kayla. And she, what's your problem? And I said, my life is filled with a lot of chaos and I need to have one place in my life where there is some order. And that's here. We worked it out. But what she said to me that day really struck me and stays with me. She said, you always tell me when I've done something wrong, but you never tell me when you're proud of me. And that hurt. And it was probably true. I didn't say many things of encouragement. It was in those first couple of months a lot of, you didn't. And so, I really strove to do that. But I looked at her and I said, Kayla, honey, I understand. I hear you. But I want you to know that what's more important than you finding acceptance from me, what's more important than my being proud of you, is that you accept and are proud of yourself. That when you look in the mirror, you like who you see. And more than anything else, that's my hope for you, that you will find that in your life. And from that day on, every morning I got up with her for school. I would see her off. I would make sure she had breakfast and see her out the door. And it was always the same thing. It was goodbye, I love you, make yourself proud. And along the way, there were more than a few times I had reason to come back to her and tell her how proud I was of her, and hope that she was proud of herself as well, more than anything else, that she looked at herself and liked who she saw. Because that's an important part. If I'm going to love others, I need to know how to love myself as well, which means to have respect for myself. That was what the woman gained that day at the well in Samaria. She encountered this Jewish man who knew who she was, who knew what she was like, and asked for a drink from her, had respect for her, accepted her the way she was, and she became something so much more because she found in him that acceptance, that love, that led her to be able to love and find purpose and meaning in her life. The reason why John gives us this nameless woman, I think, is not because her name wasn't known. I suspect it was. I think the name is left out so that you and I can put our name in there, because it is the story of us all. We're all looking for the same things in life. We all have that same basic thirst. We want acceptance, we want to love, we want to be loved, and we want to have purpose. That comes especially when we realize how much God loves us. I love that imagery of St. Paul in today's letter. He says, the love of God has been poured out into our lives. Poured. It's like it's water, which makes up 60% of who we are. The love of God is compared to water, which compares to 71% of everything that covers the earth. He compares it to water that gives life. You and I, my sisters and brothers, on this third Sunday of Lent, are invited to look into our lives. In fact, today is called a Scrutiny Sunday, and if we had catechumens, we would be telling them that this is what they need to do. But it is not just for them, but for us all, to look into our lives and to ask ourselves, what is it that we truly need? Not want, but need. What is it that we truly need? And to open ourselves up to that love of God. To know that God accepts us the way we are. And the only way we will become more is accepting that love that God has for us. It is in that love that we grow to become something more. We find the ability to love ourselves and to love others. And it gives us new purpose and meaning in our life. In the end, my sisters and brothers, that's what we're all called for. To because the love of God has been poured out into our lives. And we celebrate that here again. This week, it might be helpful to take a look at ourselves and to ask ourselves, how open am I to accept that love? How conscious am I of that love? How well do I live in that love? Because in the end, my sisters and brothers, that is how God shares with us the very gift of his life.